We've all seen the videos. Everyone claiming that switching to AMD is a challenge. Or rather, that's what their title and thumbnail has you believe. And I think it's quite a bit more misleading than even they intend. So let's talk about that. Now, I just want to start off this video by saying I hold no ill will towards these tech channels. They're simply just creating a title that will get clicks, and that is fine. That's what we all do. However, calling it the AMD challenge kind of subconsciously sets an expectation that it's going to be a worse experience by a significant margin than, say, if you just stuck with NVIDIA. And that's where I have a problem with it, is for the average consumer who isn't all about content creation and just has a standard budget, AMD is a perfectly suitable option. It has worse ray tracing performance, sure, but in terms of price to performance, they are unmatched by anything except for maybe Intel. And Intel still has a long way to go in terms of drivers and everything it supports. So calling the AMD experience a challenge is just flat out wrong. I rocked a fully AMD build, a full Ryzen 9 7900, which is still in this PC, and a 7900 XT for my graphics card. I rocked that since 2023 up until just a couple of weeks ago, and it was perfect. I did have some problems with certain games like Half-Life 2 RTX, which is to be expected with a card that doesn't have as great ray tracing, and NVIDIA Remix doesn't implement FSR because it's their own proprietary stupid DLSS bullshit. But still, in general, it was a great performer. It ran every game at close to highest settings possible. Obviously, ray tracing had to be toned down, but it was a great card. And I definitely recommend anyone on a budget look into the AMD cards, especially the 6000 and 7000 series. They're going to be great price to performance. Even the 9000, the new series, is great. But in reality, these YouTube tech channels calling it a challenge is flat out wrong. Now, in all fairness to Linus Tech Tips, when they started the challenge, they were pretty early on in terms of adopting the cards to test out. The drivers back when RDNA 3 came out were rough in some areas. Certain games had driver crashes if you enabled features like ray tracing. Spider-Man Remastered, I would get a driver crash anytime I enabled ray tracing after a little bit. That has since been patched. If you're into emulation, Tears of the Kingdom had a problem where you would get like these black pixels along the terrain where the terrain was kind of stitched together in the engine. It wasn't able to fully show the geometry the way it was supposed to be. That has been fixed. That was confirmed to be a driver issue on AMD's part with RDNA 3, since it didn't exist on the 6000 series, and that was fixed. Those are really the only two I can think of in terms of driver support or any issues like that I ran into. I know there were a few other games that people had issues with at the start, but they weren't very many. It was very stable, and as time went on, performance got better. AMD has slowed down on driver updates for a little bit. I think that's just because their new generation's out, so they're working on optimizing those first. But still, day-to-day experience, it was perfect. It ran both monitors just fine. It ran all my games just fine. Full refresh rate, never had any issues. Media encoding, AMD's always going to be a little bit slower than NVIDIA's CUDA cores and their media accelerators, but it's fine. For a general experience, which is what most people are looking at when they go onto YouTube or Google and they're like, and they search, is this graphics card good? What they want to know is, how is the performance? They don't want a long drawn out video claiming it was a challenge to switch, because that will just set in their mind that, well, I'm just going to stick with NVIDIA since I know them. And that's a problem, especially where every YouTuber, including me, will complain about NVIDIA's raising pricing. They're constant business practices that are anti-consumer. In this world where we all hate NVIDIA, but no one seems to actually want to fucking switch to AMD. The only reason I switched back to NVIDIA was AMD doesn't have the highest, they don't have a high-end GPU tier yet. As soon as their next generation comes out with a high-end GPU, if they do that, I will switch back. I just needed a high-end GPU that could do media encoding perfectly. That's why I have the 5080 now, and some RT titles, which RT is getting improved on AMD. So in that end, it's even getting more of a narrow difference. So in reality, this video is meaningless because everyone's still going to call it the AMD challenge, or I switched to AMD for 30 days challenge, or whatever the hell they want to call it. And it's stupid. It's not a challenge to switch. It's no more difficult than upgrading from an older GPU to a newer one on NVIDIA. You still have to wipe out the old drivers. You still have to install the new ones, just to make sure there's no incompatibility. However, with AMD to NVIDIA, it is a little bit more complicated. When I switched from NVIDIA to AMD originally, I didn't run into any issues after doing a DDU. I didn't have to reset Windows, I didn't have to do anything. However, as soon as I took out my AMD card and I put back in my NVIDIA card, my PC would fucking crash anytime I ran anything harder than Minecraft. So I had to do a full Windows wipe to clear out every remaining driver. Only then was I able to fix the issue. Now, that shouldn't happen to anyone else, but it can happen. The point I'm trying to make here is AMD is perfectly serviceable. They are a great option, especially for more budget-oriented people, like I was many years ago. And I still look at certain budget options. I still look into upgradability. I still have some older SATA hard drives. I use external drives for media savings, so that way I can have a backup stored away from the computer and a local backup in the computer. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, just stop calling it the AMD challenge and just say, I switched to AMD for 30 days, here's how it went. Still a captivating title. And it doesn't put a predisposition that it's going to be a difficult process to switch, because it's really not. AMD has been killing it. They are in every major game console except for the Nintendo Switch. But I think that solidifies AMD's morality even more, considering what NVIDIA and Nintendo do nowadays. But yeah, just a short little video. This wasn't the video that I had planned today. I was actually going to go over some devices that I've used day to day for over a year. But I keep seeing thumbnails and videos pop up. I think the most egregious one that just pisses me off is Toasty Bros, because they're such fence sitters. There's no real way to put it other than that. They do whatever people will say, or they'll do anything as long as it makes people happy, so they won't actually criticize one way or another. And I don't know, they don't seem to have any balls to actually have any proper opinions, and then they just are always doing fake smiles. I don't know, that's a video for another day. Their AMD challenge video from a couple months ago just pissed me off, so I thought I'd make this video. Anyway, yeah, if you liked it, great. Leave a like. If you hated it, dislike it, that's fine. And subscribe if you want to. I'm not going to force you. Have a great day.